All right, so for today's episode on the preview of the Chicago Bears, I pose a question to you, the viewer. How do you view the Chicago Bears over the last number of years? Is this a team that has gotten lucky because it's had a really good defense, or is this a team that no matter how good its defense is going to be, as long as it is hampered by mediocre quarterback play, as it has been for the last number of years, is it never going to be able to get over the hump until they make a change? That's kind of what we're looking at for the Chicago Bears this year, because they've decided to bring in outside help to challenge Mitch Trubisky as he continues to face criticism for not living up to that third overall pick pedigree where he was selected at a couple of years ago. So the Bears are an interesting enigma, and I think last year we can sort of give them a pass because of the injuries they had to the front seven of this awesome defense that caused Khalil Mack to face a lot of double and triple teams. And it's really just, it's hard when your playmaker star on defense doesn't have the help that he needs to be able to do what he does best. And that's just, it's not Chuck Pagano's fault. He blitzed plenty enough. It's been a different sort of a ride since Vic Fangio left for Denver. And it is what it is at this point. So luckily they can do better this year, be healthier, because on paper this defense is still really intimidating. Believe me, being in the NFC North with these guys is no fun at all. And I even remember the day they traded for Khalil Mack, I was like, oh God, we have to face him twice a year. This is not what we want at all. On the other side of the ball, you have Matt Nagy trying to be the creative play calling head coach that we saw at him a couple years ago. Had to dial it back last year because he didn't necessarily have the talent capable of pulling off his RPO system and all of his trickery that he wanted to do. So they had to settle for less. And they've done a lot in the offseason to sort of remedy those situations. So let's take a look at how that went. Before we get into this year, let's go ahead and take a look at the 2019 recap for the Chicago Bears. They went 8-8 overall, which is kind of depressing after you go 12-4, completely dominate things and make it to the playoffs, only to exit because of a field goal. It's just, I know how that feels. Offense ranked 29th in the league. They were 25th against the pass, 27th against the run. Defense was 8th overall, still really, really good. 9th against the pass and 9th against the rush. Matt Nagy is your head coach entering his third year with a career record of 20-12 with the Chicago Bears. Snapshot of the previous 4 years. In 2018, they were 12-4. 2017, they were 5-11. 2016, 3-13. 2015, they were 6-10. So they've come a long way from that 3-13 season. The 12-4 was refreshing for them, to say the least. But I'm going to be honest, and one of that question that I posed to you in the beginning of this episode, my answer is that it's just been inept quarterback play since the days of Rex Grossman. So we've had, we've seen Kyle Orton, Rex Grossman, Jay Cutler. They thought Mike Glennon was going to be a starter there for a hot minute when they gave him that huge contract that ended up not working out at all. And then, of course, we've had Mitchell Trubisky for a couple of years, and it hasn't worked out. Even when Jay Cutler was here, it was pretty decent quarterback play, but it wasn't enough to really give you any sort of, or to inspire you, if I could say that. So going into this season, they finally decided to bring in outside help, and we'll just swing right into the projected depth chart for the Chicago Bears for the 2020 season. And we'll take a look at the offense first, because that's sort of what the segue is going, if you will. Unscripted is always fun. So for the quarterback position, I'm penciling in Nick Foles to be the starter, because I don't see how Mitch Trubisky is going to beat him out in camp. And now it's going to be entirely dependent on which version of Nick Foles that we get, and not having a preseason and not having the normal offseason routine makes this a little bit harder to judge. But at the same time, I've seen Mitch Trubisky. I don't think he's going to get any better than what he is right now. Surprisingly enough, just to give him a little bit of a bone here, I looked up, doing the research for this, I stumbled across his career completion percentage, which is a healthy 63-point-something%. But the problem is he just whiffs too many times when going down the field. So I do believe that Nick Foles is probably going to win this quarterback battle. I would be surprised if Mitch doesn't, or if Mitch does. So either way, I'd be happy if I'm wrong, because that would be a really interesting story. Moving on to the offensive line, we'll start there with Daniels, Whitehair. Is it Coward or Coward? I should have looked that up before I said that. And then right tackle was Massey. Now, I believe Whitehair and Daniels were flip-flopped last year, and then they flipped them back again, and apparently there's a rumor that could flip happen a third time, if you will. So they're definitely still looking for stability on the offensive line as they move forward. One of the things that I noticed a lot of people talk about last year was they were very unhappy with the tight end situation, and Trey Burton is, of course, out of town now because he didn't work out after they signed him from the Philadelphia Eagles when they won that Super Bowl. So he came over, didn't necessarily work out. It wasn't the skill set that they were looking for, so they went tight end happy this offseason. And I believe at one point there was jokes going online that this team had 10 tight ends on the roster because they were looking for the right ones. So what they did was they went out and got a whole bunch. They got Cole Kmet in the draft from Notre Dame. They got the ageless wonder Jimmy Graham from free agency. And for the other pass catchers, we of course have Allen Robinson, who had a great year last year despite the inconsistencies of Mitch Trubisky. And then they sort of have to figure out what else they have in the wide receiver department. Anthony Miller looks like he's going to be a star in this league, I think. And then they have a couple other veterans, Cordell Patterson. They got Ted Ginn in the offseason for a deep threat. And then they also still have Calvin Ridley, who they drafted a couple years ago. The jury is still out on him. So a lot of weapons for whoever it is going to be in the quarterback spot. One of the things with the other thing that is concerning is David Montgomery, who's likely to be the starter this year. Didn't really showcase that tackle breaking ability that he did in college, and that has me concerned because he was one of my favorite running backs coming out of this draft because of that attribute. And of course, Tariq Cohen is still around. So that is a look at the offense briefly. Taking a look at the defense, this is kind of a couple interesting nuggets here. You of course have Eddie Jackson in the safety position, who got that big contract, so he's definitely the leader of the defense. You have Deshaun Gibson, who comes over in free agency from San Francisco to fill that other safety slot that was departed by Clinton Dix. At the corner position, you have Kyle Fuller over there, who is good on the left side, and on the right side is a question mark because they did sign Artie Burns in the offseason. He is now injured. I believe it was an ACL tear, so he's out for the season. So that is going to rush Jalen Johnson into a starting role sooner than later. And that's kind of exciting, at least for me, because he was a corner that I really liked coming out of college in Utah in this previous draft. I believe he was the 50th overall pick. So a top 50 talent that has to step in right away is not necessarily a bad thing in my mind. You just don't have the veteran experience that you would have got with Burns. Even though I've never been a fan of Artie Burns since he got into this league, I didn't believe that he was worth that first overall pick the Steelers spent on him many moons ago. Moving into the front seven, this is the bread and butter of the defense. You, of course, have the freight train Khalil Mack, Danny Trevathan, Roquan Smith, and then they got Robert Quinn in free agency to help shore up that pass rush. On the defensive line, a little bit of a hiccup with Eddie Goldman opting out, so that'll probably land Laquale London in the starting spot at nose tackle. And then you, of course, have Hakeem Hicks, who missed 11 games last year with injury. And then on the other side is Nichols, of course. And that is the concern. The injuries to the front seven last year are what really hampered Chuck Pagano being able to do what he wanted to do with this defense. So hopefully this time, it doesn't always work out because, injuries are going to happen. We've already seen numerous ACL tears as camps have started up, and season-ending injuries more than we would like. But that is just going to be the question mark heading in, is can the front seven stay healthy? And if they can, I think you see a return to dominance that we saw in 2018 when the Bears went 12-4. It's also going to depend heavily on the quarterback play, and I do believe Nick Foles can be the one to win that job. Taking a look at the schedule heading into the 2020 season, not terribly great, but again, not terribly difficult. I think this is one of the ones that sort of lands in the middle for me. We got the Lions on the road to open the season, Giants at home, Falcons on the road, Colts and Bucks at home, Panthers and Rams on the road, and then the Saints at home to round out the first half of the schedule. Looking at the first half of the schedule, road games are intimidating. Your most difficult one is probably going to be in Atlanta against that wild offense that they got out there with all those great players like Julio Jones and whatnot. Everything else seems pretty okay to me. The Colts and Bucks at home should be fun games, and the Saints game is probably their biggest challenge, and that doesn't come until the end of the first half. So they'll be able to figure out who they are along the way. Second half of the schedule is as follows. You got the Titans on the road, the Vikings at home, Packers on the road, Lions and Texans at home, Vikings and Jaguars on the road, and then we end the season against the Packers at Soldier Field. If things go the way that I think they're going to go, and the Bears being as good on paper as they are, which should translate to on the field, on the field, what's the word I'm looking for? On the field production. This should be the game here at the end that probably decides the AFC North title. And I'm not trying to write off my own team because I do believe that they are still as good as they were last year. It's just, I think it feels like it's in the cards for the Vikings to have a little bit of an off season. Of course, they lost so much talent in free agency, so I think the Bears should be able to leapfrog them in the standings and compete with the Packers for the division crown. Of course, we do get to see the Titans and the Texans on the schedule. I think the second half of the schedule, if we don't consider, you know, the fact that it's really backloaded with divisional games, the out of division games aren't that intimidating. The Titans should be a tough game. That's going to be real smash mouth football. This defense versus Derrick Henry should be exciting. So overall, an interesting schedule, but nothing where I'm really looking at it and panicking if I was a Bears fan. So that is a look at the schedule. The two big storylines I'm looking at are the passing game this year. Is Mitch Trubisky going to be able to fend off Nick Foles, or is Nick Foles going to take this over? And if he does, which version of him do we get? Can Allen Robinson have another good season back-to-back? What are we going to see out of the development of Anthony Miller? And this is a nice segue, actually, into the next section. The ageless veterans that we have on this roster this year. Jimmy Graham, Ted Ginn, Cordero Patterson. There's another one on here that escapes me at the moment, but those three sort of stand out, and they're all on offense. So how does that work out? Are they going to be able to, you know, sort of keep up with this younger batch of players that the Bears have brought in, like Cole Kmet? They still have Anthony Miller, Calvin Ridley. How does that all work out? And, you know, Jimmy Graham's one of those players that's been around the league for a while now. He's had his fair share of injuries since his days in Seattle. So there is some concern there with him as well. So that's going to do it for the preview of the Chicago Bears for the 2020 season. We're going to end it with my favorite draft pick that they got that I think can contribute later on in the season, and that's Darnell Mooney from Tulsa. And I believe that they drafted him so that he could be another one of those players that takes the top off the defense. But we'll see if Mitch Trubisky is playing quarterback, can they really get it to Darnell Mooney and sort of exercise his skill set? So all sort of good things to be looking forward to for the Chicago Bears for the season. A team that I'm really interested in, because not only are they in my division, but if things go right for them, this could be one of those dark horse teams that comes out of nowhere because we were sleeping on them thanks to an 8-8 season. So that's going to do it for this video. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.